Okay, I'm going to record so we can upload it on YouTube after. So those who can't watch it live now can watch it on YouTube later. Sorry, we're a couple minutes late, but aloha, everybody. I'll give people a few minutes to find us on my personal Facebook page, Karen Lobo Kaulana, and jump on the live to watch my interview with Christopher Yanuaria. Aria. Oh, I got to get your name right. Christopher Yanuaria. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yanuaria. Okay, what kind of name is that?
It's Filipino.
What kind of name?
Filipino.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Filipino. Okay, yeah. Okay. Filipino. Okay. Yanuaria. Okay. I don't hear that name often though.
Yeah, I think we're the only ones on Maui. I know there's some Yanuarias on Oahu, but yeah, not too many.
Not too
But
many.
we're usually up north, so of the Philippines. So Isabela, like Ilocos Norte area. That's where
Oh.
we originate. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, for those of you tuning in, this is Healing Hawaii with Karen Kaulana. I'm Karen Kaulana. Aloha, you guys. How's it? Thank you so much for joining us on Father's Day. Aloha and mahalo to all of you and happy Father's Day. Hau'oli la makuakane. So, uh, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Chris, you're not a father yet, right?
Not yet.
But you just
Like to
celebrated.
be one.
Okay, but you just celebrated your second anniversary. So happy anniversary to you and your wife.
Thank you
And
so
thank
much.
you so much for doing this tonight because well, we'll talk about how we met, but Chris comes with a wealth of background and experience and knowledge, and I'm excited to delve into this topic about the men's talk story circle that you do. It's the perfect topic to talk about on Father's Day. Um, but I always start my show off with a blessing or prayer, and you said you would be willing to do one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can do one.
Okay, okay, I'm going to turn it over to you to start us off.
Okay. All right. Well, um, God, thank you so much for this opportunity where we can just talk story and just share the importance of fathers, the importance of male engagement. God, you desire for all men to be whole and holistic and to be able to step into what is authentic to us. And so we pray that during this conversation that you would lead and guide our conversations. We say mahalo for just all the fathers out there who are maybe listening, or for those who are listening who know fathers, who know men. I pray that this day that fathers and just men in general will realize their importance in this world, and would realize their need to be fully present with those that they're in relationships with. So we pray that you would just bless this time that we have, and we say mahalo ke akua.
Mahalo, mahalo, amen. Mahalo ke akua.
And
Mahalo nui. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. That was perfect. That was awesome. So for those of you just joining us, this is Healing Hawaii with Karen Kaulana. I'm Karen Kaulana, and my guest tonight is Christopher Yanuaria, and he works in ending violence, sexual violence, and in healthy relationships and boundaries and in all things related to those areas. And I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for that beautiful opening prayer. And thank you for being here on Father's Day. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Ha'oli la makuakane. And just thank you, Chris.
yeah.
I want to ask you first, tell me about yourself and your background. How did you get into this work? What is the work that you do? Where do you work? What do you do?
Yeah. Well, first I was just born and raised in Maui, Kahului, Maui. So that's where I'm from. I currently live on Oahu. Been here for, oh gosh, I don't know, 16, 17 years now. But currently I am the program coordinator for PAU Violence, Prevention, Awareness, Understanding Violence. In Hawaiian, PAU, it's popularly known as, it's like done or finished. So we're at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. and we do violence prevention education. And so just facilitate violence prevention workshops and trainings and do kinds of awareness events for students, faculty, and staff at UH Manoa. UH Manoa is where I got my master's in social work. So, and that was many years ago. Before that, I was doing work in, where was I working? At Domestic Violence Action Center. So I was doing violence prevention education with one of their outreach programs, the CHSS, the Consortium for Health, Safety, and Support. And so what we did, we would provide domestic violence prevention services out on the Leeward Coast, partnering with Native Hawaiian and Filipino communities. And so that was super fun. I did that for almost 3 years before I got this job at the university. And then before that, I mean, I did lots of work doing anti-human trafficking, both locally, nationally, and abroad. So helping to end that huge issue that we still see happening here, all over the place. And so I've done that kind of work, and that really got me into the anti-violence work and the prevention work, because being able to see, I worked directly with traffic survivors when I was out in Washington, D.C., and both worked with those who are from the United States, also those who are from other countries who've been trafficked into the United States. And so wow. Hearing their stories and seeing just the tragedy of the effects of human trafficking, just having an individual, it's horrible. And so my mind went to, how can we prevent this from happening? And then it went to, how can we prevent like all violence from happening? And so a lot of my efforts now is more so on prevention than working directly with survivors of violence. And so, but yeah. And then I'm a member of our Leo Kane group, and it's that's one of the groups, and we'll probably talk about that maybe later on. And
okay.
And I don't know what else
wow.
to say about.
See, you come with a wealth of background and knowledge and experience in all the work that you've done in violence prevention, education, work with survivors. I didn't know that you worked, that you had a background with sex trafficking. Wow. So how I met Christopher was that through a podcast. We were both guests on a podcast called The Respect Room, put on by the Sex Abuse Treatment Center. And the episode that we were on was titled Bystander to Upstander. And so it was Chris and I and David, right? David Nistal was on with us. And we had to talk about, we got to talk about how to be an upstander versus a bystander in that podcast. I think you can still find it. It was for April, for Sex Assault Awareness Month, that the Sex Abuse Treatment Center here in Hawaii put that out on the web. But I think you can still find it if you put in Sex Abuse Treatment Center Respect Room. You probably can find our podcasts out there. And there were 4 episodes, one each week for Sex Assault Awareness Month. And we were one of them. And so that's how I got to meet Chris. And can you talk about what the difference is between a bystander and an upstander? Because when I got asked to do that podcast, and I've been working in public health for a long time and prevention education, but I had never heard the term upstander. That was new to me. That wasn't in public health circles back in the day when I started 20 some odd years ago. So it was new to me, and I had to kind of research it a little to figure out what upstander was. And then I realized what it was, and then was able to gather stories and information to share in that podcast. But can you share what is the difference between a bystander and an upstander?
Yeah, it was a great podcast.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was really fun, and it was great because it was kind of it was it's something that I've never done before, which is like kind of a more talk story kind of podcast, which has been really great. But yeah, so bystanders are just individuals who maybe witness some sort of emergency or harmful situation. Um, so it's like people that are just standing by who maybe see something or hear something about something, an emergency going on right then and there, or that a harmful situation that might happen later on. Um, and then an upstander is someone who maybe observes the conflict or the unacceptable behavior and takes action to make some sort of impact in the situation. And so we do trainings. One of the trainings that we do is bystander intervention trainings at the university. And so we help people understand what bystanders are, and then we encourage folks to be active bystanders or upstanders, as what was shared in the on the podcast. So that's one of the workshops that we offer at the university, amongst like just a bunch of others. So
Yeah, you guys offer amazing topics and things that you can bring into classrooms or into groups. And we did discuss in the podcast how to be a upstander safely and
yeah,
consider the risks. You can go check that out. Sex Abuse Treatment Center, the Respect Room. And I think the title of our podcast is From Bystander to Upstander. But yeah, that was really fun and good because we got to talk story about a lot of things. But one of the lessons that you do through UH, and I think this is through PAU Violence, is this talk story circle with men. Is that right?
yeah. So
How long
we
how long have you been doing that? And with what groups do you do that talk story?
Yeah, so when I first started at UH, I was involved with PAU Violence when I was a student, and so even as an intern, and this was many years ago, I was an intern. I was actually the first intern at PAU Violence, and so
Oh,
when I started, I recognized the need for more male engagement, and 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 being able to do that. How can men come alongside um, others to be able to help prevent violence from happening in their communities? And so, and so there's different reasons why I feel like there, why we need male engagement. Because, well, one, we need male engagement because statistically, just men are hurting, and so suicide amongst males is 4 times higher than among females, and so male deaths represent 79% of all U.S. suicides.
wow.
And then when we look at illicit drug use, men are more likely than women to use almost all types of illicit drugs, and that when used, the result is they end up in emergency rooms and they overdose, and so and that's more than women.
Mhm.
And also, this is the prison population. 93% of the prison population is male, and then with over 60% having no high school education. And so
Wow.
there's a need to be able to engage more men, because there's a lot of men who are hurting, not just themselves, but they're hurting others too. And I mean, just like maybe a lot of people know about the statistics about like domestic violence and sexual violence. A lot of the perpetrators, majority of the perpetrators, not all, but majority of perpetrators are male. And so we're seeing that men are hurting ourselves. There are also men who are hurting others. And so how can we just engage more men? And this is the reason why I've wanted to get men together to see how we can help heal together, and also how we can help reduce some of the issues that we see within our community.
So when did it start? When did you start doing these talk story circles with men?
Oh gosh. So there was some talk stories that I did when I was a student, and God, that was maybe, I'm gonna date myself now, but it was maybe like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe right there. Um, so started doing that, and it was called another name, but the more recent one that we started is Ho'o Kanaka, in which we um, got together men over this past semester to talk about to help just engage folks to live out more authentic forms of masculinity.
And we're going to talk about that. What is authentic forms of masculinity, or what's authentic forms of expression, of male expression? Um,
Mm.
but before we get into that, what is the age range of the men that are participate in these circles? Are they mostly college students or from all walks of life in different parts, different age ranges? And is it inclusive of gay men, trans men, straight men?
Yeah. So the group at the university is just anyone who's a part of the university. So it's
Okay.
mostly college students.
Okay.
Uh, we also have some faculty and staff that are involved as well, and so um, that particular group is majority. They have some sort of connection with the university, and what's been great is that specifically what Hulk Kanaka is that because of the pandemic, we're able to partner with other campuses too. So we had, I
Mm.
think, 5 other campuses who were also involved with that specific group that we had. So yeah, and so it was across the state that we were able to engage men within the university, and it was great. And um, yeah, and then we affirm all men, and all men are welcome to our trainings and to our talk story groups. And because we want to be able to support each man in pursuit of their just deeper authentic self. And which includes gay, bisexual, transgender identified folks. And so yeah, we're affirming of all men and we're welcoming of all men.
Wow, that's awesome. That is really cool. So tell me about these talk stories. What are things that you cover? How does it work? What is there a structure? Is there an outline? And what kind of things do you talk about? And what if
Yeah,
and then we'll get to what have been shared and what did you learn and what can you share with us? But what is covered in the talk story circles?
yeah. So a lot of, and I think it's good to also just kind of lay out like the situation, because where we find ourselves in a lot of our different cultures, our ancestors, we grew up in communities, in small communities where we would in the morning have our responsibilities, and then we would come back to our smaller groups, and we would just talk story, and we would share with one another. Um, and as time goes on, uh, we don't have that tight knit community where we can share with one another. And so this specifically has been detrimental to men. There's a lot of isolation and feeling like pressures for men, feeling like they have to just do things on their own. They have to be and look and act a certain way. And so one of the things, and then especially during this time of COVID, where there's social distancing, and so we don't have people getting together to share that space and with one another. And so that's why we thought it was really a good time for us to be able to create some sort of group where men can feel safe and feel supported, to be able to connect with one another. And so uh, yeah, and so some of the things that we do, we have just different, like development, skill development. We help to foster more self-awareness. We try to practice healthy vulnerability.
Wow,
And
that's
try
kind of
to,
cool. Practice
yeah,
healthy vulnerability with men's groups. That is okay, as a woman who's single and dating, that is really cool. Practicing healthy vulnerability. I like that. Okay, keep going.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. And just to like in ways that we can kind of stay accountable to one another. And
Mm,
so because we want to be able to uh, see how men can gather together in just the most powerful ways to lead these authentic, fulfilling lives. And so, and the way that we do this is that we use the vehicle of sharing our stories. And so we facilitate discussions that create opportunities to practice vulnerability, self-examination, and accountability in this kind of sacred space. And so, and it's been great. It's been really refreshing to be able to be in that type of space with men, because there's other spaces like where men gather. I mean, like at the bars or at sporting events, and those are great. But maybe there's not some of the conversations that maybe need to happen in those types of settings, where they can be open about some of the struggles that they're going through, or
mm.
some of the relationship conflicts that they have, some of the grieving that they're experiencing. And so sometimes these other spaces where men gather, they're not able to discuss those heavy and important things. And so Whole Kanaka is a group that we wanted to create that kind of space where we can talk about these types of things with other men. And so it's been,
Wow.
yeah, it's been really great.
That's amazing because it sounds to me like you're creating a safe space. You're creating a safe environment for men to be who they are, not be judged, be accepted, be affirmed, and to share what they need to share. What's their burden, what's bothering them, what's challenging them. And it sounds like a very supportive and safe space.
Yeah, and I like to point out that like for us, there's safety is also just really important, uh, because if we're not able to just share vulnerably and authentically, then a fear of judgment, then no one would want to like come. And so we really stress like confidentiality in the group. What's shared within the group is not shared outside of the group. And so
Mm.
that's a huge something that we emphasize at every meeting, the beginning of the meeting, emphasize confidentiality. And so once we are able to set that up, it's beautiful to see how men just kind of just open up, and be able to see how even the difference between like a safe space and sacred space. A lot of folks use the term like sacred, safe space, and sometimes I've been in meetings where it's deemed as a safe space, but I didn't feel safe.
Oh,
It's like,
okay.
you know, it's safe to whom, right? Like who, and
Ah.
so I like using the term too, like sacred, because when, at least for us, uh, we come into the group understanding that there's a sacredness in all of us, that there is a spirit within us that is sacred. And no matter if we're from Hawaii or not, if we have different political affiliations, if we have different religions, or whatever type of thing that kind of divides us, what we're more interested in our group is what are the things that connect us. And so
Mm.
what brings us together. And so that's what we really focus on. And that's one of the commitments we ask our members to uphold, that we recognize the sacredness in all all the men that are involved in our group.
Wow, that's awesome. How many men are usually at a meeting or in a group?
It fluctuates, and so when it first started, there were like maybe our other group before Ho'okanaka, that was just like maybe at the most at a meeting was like maybe 15 or 16.
Wow, that's
Uh,
still pretty impressive. Okay.
yeah. And then for this one, whole Kanaka group, we specifically reached out to different departments. And so this was more concentrated group. So we had about 8 or 9 folks. So yeah. So it's a smaller group, which has been great because it's only like an hour and a half that we are able to meet. But one of the things that a lot of the men shares, like they wish it was longer. And but I think 1.5 hours is a good time to be able to kind of get everyone share their input, because we're a smaller group, so everyone can kind of share during that time.
Yeah, that's really cool. Have you ever done this outside of the university system? I feel like we need community men's groups, or are there community men's groups, support groups for men that are similar to this that men can be a part of?
Yeah, so I remember when I was an intern at Child and Family Services, and where I worked in the DOVE program, which is Developing Options to Violence. And it was working with men who are court mandated because they were perpetrators of violence. And so I remember going to these groups and helping to co-facilitate these groups. And the information that they shared was just amazing. They talked about like how to like communicate, how to process some of the maybe the anger or the hurt or the trauma that they've experienced. A lot of different kind of education about like surrounding violence and things like that. And so I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I wish like more men can like join this type of group, but it was only for court mandated men. So not anyone can just come. And I remember asking, like, are there any other groups like this that where men can gather and can learn about these essential skills that all men need to learn. But it was there at least at the time there wasn't any that I've known of, that they knew of. And so I too was like, yeah, we need to have more of these in the community. And thankfully, since I've been doing this work for several years now, and there are groups out there that are kind of doing something very similar. And so I know on Maui, there's a group that we work with is Kane Connections. And so with Kavika Matos out there, he's part of our other group that we have. Another group that we have is Leo Kane that I'm a part of, the Voices of Men. And so we are a group of it's both men, women, anyone who identifies outside of that binary are welcome to come. And it's a group that helps to just expand the conversation about what it means to be a man, and how can we live out authentic manhood as aloha-minded individuals. And so one of the things with that group, Naleo Kane, one of the things that we're going through is we're talking about what does it mean to live out the aloha response that Pono Shin talks about. And so that's another group, and everyone and anyone can come and join. We have it I think it's bi-monthly that we have our groups. And so, and then, yeah, and then there's other groups too that are out there. I know that another group that I was a part of is,
I know somebody's visiting you, right?
Someone's visiting me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
As we go live. Right?
As we go live, somebody's visiting you. That's so funny. The things about doing live virtual interviews and people are at their own homes, you never know what's gonna happen or what's gonna come up. So somebody's visiting you at your door, right?
Someone's visiting right now. My wife is like checking up right now.
Oh, okay, okay. Are you okay for the next half an hour? You're good?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Okay.
But
well, I wanted
sorry,
no, that's okay. I wanted to ask you, can you talk briefly about what is the Aloha response? I'm familiar with Pono Shim and his work with Aloha. But can you talk briefly about what is the Aloha response? And then I wanted to ask you about some of the issues and challenges that come up for men. What is the burden that they carry? What is the hurt? What is the pain? What is it that comes up for them? But first, can you talk, because you mentioned the Aloha response, and by the way, you were mentioning the Leo Kane, so that's a community men's group that you said you meet bi-monthly.
Yeah, it's comprised of men, but as well as others too. So
Okay.
A lot of what we talk about at Naleo Kane is to, as men, how can we help to, well, part of it is it's partnered with the Department of Health, and so our focus is also on helping to reduce domestic and sexual violence. So how can men come alongside those who are addressing that issue within the community? And so yeah, so that's part of it. And then with Naleo Kane, we're kind of going through this whole thing, learning about the Aloha response that's shared by Pono Shim. And so there is a Hawaii state statute.
Yes, the Aloha Law by Auntie Pilahi Paki, right?
Yeah,
the Aloha Law. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's everything, the Ahakai, Lokahi, Olu Olu Ha'aha'a, and Ahunui. And so that is what has been outlined by Pono. And so it just kind of shares, he goes more in depth with it, and I'm nowhere near like being able to explain the depth of it, because this is something that we're all going through. So Pono Shim has been is helping to take us through what the law response is. But basically, the way I see it is kind of living in the way that we were meant to live, living in a way that is authentic to who we are, that where, to me, it's living a life of love, of forgiveness, of grace, gentleness, humility, these types of things. And so we're learning this as a group.
Yes.
And it's been great, because we've been doing this for the last maybe 6 months now, and
wow.
And so we're and then a handful of us are part of Pono's cohort too. So yeah, so this is something that is part of our mission statement, that we are aloha-minded individuals, and so and we believe that part of healthy manhood and healthy masculinity is living into this aloha response.
I want to share my screen because I have the that acronym for Aloha that is part of the Hawaii state statute. I don't know, can you see that? Oh, I don't know what happened. Wait. Oh, there.
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay. So that's the Aloha state statute. We have a law, an Aloha law, the Auntie Pilahi Paki instigated, And each letter of aloha stands for a Hawaiian value. So when you talk about this men's group, or that is inclusive of others that are not just men, but you are going through learning how to live authentically with akahai, with kindness, learning to live authentically with lokahi, which is harmony, olu olu, agreeable pleasantness, ha'a ha'a, humility, and aho nui, patience. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's exactly what that we are going through all of that, and learning through each one. So and we have different guest speakers that come in and talk, and so it's really great because we have guest speakers to share their story and about how they live out these Hawaiian values in their lives, and then we kind of have a talk story around that, around their short share.
Wow. Oh, that's neat. That's really cool. Okay, so I have, because I'm female, I identify as straight female, she, her. I have been and working in public health and working on the other side with survivors of violence or in prevention of violence, but a lot of times with mixed groups or with particularly women and girls who tend to be, I don't want to use the word victims, but who tend to be the receiver on the receiving end of violence in our community. Not always, they can be perpetrators too, but for a most part, and men and boys are also receivers of violence as well. But I tend to work in female groups, and there's a lot of support groups and work with women and girls because of trauma and violence towards women in particular. So I'm interested to know what are the issues, challenges that have come up for men in the men's group? What trauma, what pain, what hurt have men been able to talk about in this sacred space that we need to know as a community to also understand, to support, um, to heal? So is
Mm.
there anything you can share?
Yeah. I mean, it's just real interesting. Some of the things that I shared about, like with the high suicide rates and high illicit drug use that leads to death. Like those types of things are some of the things that we've seen in the groups. Just even within, I think it was in February where the Department of Health had this survey that was shared, where 82% of those who participated in the survey have experienced some mental health condition at some point over the last 6 months, so during the pandemic. And so in the survey, it was 58% of the men who experienced mental health like issues that they've not experienced prior to the pandemic. And so, so there's the whole issue of mental health, and what I hear from men is that when they experience some kind of trauma or depression or abandonment, types of things like that, not a lot of them don't go to and get or go and get help or tell people about it. And so, you know, many women actually go to see their therapist, and if they have like are experiencing like suicidal like ideation, then they share that. But with men, it's different. They're not able to share that, and I think part of that is because of the culture that we live in, because the culture says that men, you just have to suck it up. And in Hawaii, it's like, oh, I get them. Then I don't need help, right? And this kind of type of man, that what it means to be strong is to just do it on your own. And so the sense of being in community is not in necessarily, and talking about like these heavy issues that they're experiencing is not in the we don't see that as much in the culture for men. And so leading to a lot of depression and anxiety and things like that. And so I think one of the things, though, I do want to highlight is just the issue of fatherlessness, because we're at Father's Day. So there's a statistic that says 90% of all homelessness and runaway children are from fatherless homes. So that's 32 times the average. And then another one that said 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. And so that's 9 times the average. Wow. And so there is some sort of correlation between fatherless homes and homelessness and runaway children and like public school dropouts or school dropouts. And so one of the issues I think that young boys face as they grow up to be men is that they don't have they either don't have a father figure in their life, or they have a father that's just not present. They're maybe in the home, but they don't give a lot of maybe attention to their children. And so a lot of boys are growing up without fathers, without a positive male mentor as they grow up, because when they start asking questions about what does it look like, what does it mean to be a man, what is it, because they don't know, it hasn't been modeled to them. And I think that when we talk about manhood, something that is said is that, masculinity isn't something that is taught. Masculinity is within 4 walls.
School. Yeah.
Masculinity. Yeah. Masculinity is caught. It's modeled. We have to have role models for us for young boys to look up to know what it looks like when they run into conflicts. How do you what does conflict how do we resolve conflicts between people? And so it's just real interesting, because some of the things, even when I have a lot of younger cousins who are boys, and some of the things that I say, I hear them saying, and I forget the kind of influence that I have on them. And it made me, when I hear some of the things that I say that they repeat it makes me think, whoa, there's a lot of responsibility that I have, because I forget that there are my cousins are very observant about the way I behave and the way that I act and things like that. And so it's really important for me to what kind of role model am I being to my younger cousins. And so I think that's a really an important thing to talk about the fatherlessness that we see within the country. I just came back from Maui just last week, before we went on our anniversary, to do a father. It was a a drive-by resource for fathers, specifically for fathers. And this was on Maui, and this was with the Fatherhood Commission. And this was great. It was just this whole event where we had, due to the pandemic, it wasn't a regular resource fair, but it was cars that was driving through. The whole community kind of came together and shared about different resources for fathers.
Wow.
And it was great. There's over 200 cars that came by. Wow. We ran out of giveaways.
Wow.
But it was, and the mayor was there. And we had different other representatives that were there, sharing their support on Maui. And so it was a really cool thing that I just witnessed, to see all of these people coming together to recognize the importance of fathers in a child's life. And so if we can do that as a community and really uplift fathers and uplift mothers and uplift, I believe our community can be better. And so, so I think that's one of the things that come up in our Talk Story sessions, is there's a lot of talk about how with some of the men that share, how they saw domestic violence within their family. how their father was abusive, and was not always there, or that they didn't have a father, and so they didn't know how what it means to be a man, how to resolve conflicts, how to share emotions, those types of things. And so I think that's an issue that, or a theme too, that I've seen throughout the men's groups that I've been a part of.
Wow. So I just remembered that I have a friend, Alan Sunil, who I think started the Dads Coalition, you know, that Coalition for Dads,
That's great.
DADS. Yeah. So I think he's still involved in that, but I remember that, and I remember seeing the pamphlet in clinics and public health circles, the Coalition for Dads, DADS, and it was an acronym for something too. But I think that's such a valuable point, that how we have to honor fathers, mothers, those who are raising the next generation, and the next generations, and also those who do not have a father or mother, and how as a community we step in, because like you said, you're influencing as a man your younger male cousins, and so we all are influencing someone without even being aware, and being more aware of that, or mindful of how we can help or step into the void, maybe, of families who are missing a parent. And I don't know if that's possible, because that void is huge. I mean, I think if we can have men and women step up to stay, but I don't know what the solution is. Do you have ideas about that? How do you deal with the fatherless families or homes that do not have a father, and or the families who have a father but the father is absent or abusive? And we're particularly talking about fathers, but this can happen with mothers too. uh but do you have ideas or solutions for that?
Yeah, I mean that's a big a big issue, the fatherlessness issue. Um, but like, what I encourage others to do, like those who are part of not just our whole Kanaka group, but also a part of the other like kind of groups that I'm involved with, is especially when I talk with other men in these groups, I share with them like we need to be mentors to other younger men. And so, especially those who, you know, who don't have fathers. And so, yeah, and then even some mothers, what they ask me like, you know, like for because she had to separate with her husband because of abuse, but is worried about like, because she has three sons, like how do they see what does actually a healthy man look like? And I
Mm.
just kind of encouraged her and say like, are you involved with other or do you know, or do you have like an uncle or someone that can take him under,
Their
under
wings,
his
like.
wing,
Hmm.
someone that's positive, or someone from some maybe a Lions Club or a church group? Are there any men that is able to maybe help and uh, um, support this young boy as he grows up and steps into his adolescent years and then into his young adult years? And so that's something that we encourage, and that I try to practice as well, just trying to mentor other younger men. And that's actually, I love doing that. That's a passion of mine to mentor the younger generation. And so
Wow.
so yeah, so
So
that's
needed, Chris. So needed. You're incredible. That is so needed.
yeah, and it's great because um and the reason why we need male engagement, another reason other than that they're hurting themselves and they're hurting others, we need male engagement because men want to help. I've been doing this work for
Mm.
a long time now, and something that I've just see as so beautiful is like how many men who just like want to live into their most authentic self that doesn't involve violence, that doesn't involve bringing people down so that they can lift themselves up. And so there's a lot of men that are out there who are well-meaning men who disagree with domestic violence and sexual violence, who want to live a life of just humility, of courage, and who wants to uplift every person, and wants to be able to connect with both women, men, and others in more authentic ways. And so that's been a real joy over the years of being able to just find like these men who are just coming out who are just like amazing, great, that I've been learning from throughout the years about that they've been teaching me a lot about truly what it means to be a more authentic man.
Wow. Wow. Now there's also like the burden that I think men feel of the stereotypes of what manhood is or what it is to be a man. Like men are the breadwinner. Men are the responsible ones for the family, for the home. I mean, that has changed somewhat. But there's still kind of that burden, right? And also the thing about men not being um able to be emotional, emotionally vulnerable, that not seen as, you know, men being macho, that whole
Yeah.
thing. Does all of that play a role in how men are able to deal and cope and heal and express themselves because of this idea that society sometimes puts on genders?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do, like in our trainings when we talk about manhood or masculinity, is we do this activity called the man box. And basically we talk about like, we ask the question like, what does it mean to be a man in Hawaii?
Ooh.
And um, and and like, what are the stereotypical things that you hear about what it means to be a man? Maybe not your own ideas about what it means to be a man. What are the stereotypical ideas? And it's funny because the things that they say are the same in every group that I run the activity. And so what they say is that, what it means to be a stereotypical man in Hawaii is that you just have like, is to, well, be straight and have a lot of sex with women, right?
Mm.
That's what we hear. Like, so the stereotypical man does that. The stereotypical man in Hawaii plays sports like football
Mm.
or like surfs, has jobs like being a construction worker. Um, uh, and one of the funny things that comes up all the time is like when I ask like what kind of vehicles men drive in Hawaii, like that, like, manly men drive. And they always come up with a lifted Tacoma. They
Oh,
always say
that's
that.
so
And
funny.
so there are these things that when we talk about like stereotypical manhood, masculinity and manhood in Hawaii specifically, there's these things that we're agreeing to, or that we all understand because it's drenched in our society. Like, this is what it means to be a man. And so to step outside of that box means that you're not a man. And so there's this pressure that,
Mm.
because when you step outside of the box, then you're called all kinds of names,
Oh,
and
yes.
so then you're pressured to live within this narrow definition about what it means to be a man. And a lot of these things are not necessarily bad, like to have muscles, right? To play sports, it's not necessarily bad. But when it becomes bad is that if you use those things or are participating in those things as um, because you feel like pressured to do it, and because it's like part of your identity.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and so that becomes like having muscles isn't bad, but if you like, what we see is like there's a lot of men using steroids, to get like
Oh.
this kind of physique look. There's drinking isn't that bad, but once it gets to where now it's become an addiction, and everything that comes with that, like that becomes an issue. And so yeah, so we do talk about that. That does play into like the groups, and we have a discussion about that.
Okay. Wow. Wait, hold on. You okay? Kevin put something in the fridge for you. Sorry. I had interruptions here too. Um, so what I was gonna ask you was how do you help men to become their authentic self, find who they are and be able to be that?
Mm. Yeah, so I think one of the things, and it happens in our group and just even just outside of our group too, like um, I I try to model like and be my most authentic self. Um, I try to share vulnerably about like the pains and struggles that I go through, and
Uh,
I talk about the depression that I experienced, and um, the wanting to like wanting to slit my wrist when I was a teenager.
wow.
Those types of things that I talk
Wow.
about, and it's just really interesting to see how many men just resonate with some of the like some of the things that I talk about. Is I think that it's just I'm just the only one that is experiencing that, but there's actually a lot of men that go through a lot of similar things. And so once I'm able and other men are able to model and share the full range of our emotions, not just anger or whatever, but also just
Mm.
grief, sadness, joys, and share that within this space, um, then 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 more men can maybe healthily process some of the issues that they're experiencing and not feel alone in doing that. And so uh, like I walk along, I try to walk alongside men, and not just within the group, but also when we're just like going out surfing, being able to give time to them and build a relationship. Because I think
Mm.
what we all desire is I mean a Jewish rabbi said this, is there's two things that human beings desire, is uh, to fit in and stand out. So to fit in
Mm.
is to fit in into a community, to be able to be part of a community where they find some sort of connection with. So with our men's group, there's connection. What connects us is because we identify as men. So being a part of the like a group where there is some sort of identification that brings the group together, and so that
Mm.
so part of, and then to stand out is to that I'm part of this group, but I bring a uniqueness to this group. So to me, that speaks to purpose. So to be able to find out like what is your purpose in this group? What is the gifts that you bring out that you give to this group that makes the group what it is, that only you have. And so I think part of what we do too is finding out in these groups and like what brings you alive, what uh,
Mm.
and and I mean, there's this quote too, and I'm going to butcher it, but it says like, "Don't ask the world what the world needs, but ask yourself what makes you come alive, come on fire." Because what the world needs is people who've come alive, who've come on fire. And so we need people, and we need men who've come alive, and
Mm.
we need men who are going after their passion. And a lot of times when we talk about like um, um, these men, what their passion is, it's beautiful because it's connected to helping people, um,
Mm.
and lifting people up. And so yeah, so those are some of the things that we talk about in our group that I have with men, and it's been great. It's been really good. I mean, there's a lot of different things too I can share, but that's definitely one of the things that we talk about. And then also just being able to whenever not the group, our group, we don't always agree with each other. There's always like issues that do come up, and then one of the things that we try to practice is to, you know, criticize to uplift, rather than criticize to like break down. So we try to empower men when whenever we see behaviors that are unacceptable. And so you know, there's a story about Maya Angelou, you know, the poet, and Tupac Shakur when they first met, and it was during the film Poetic Justice. And so I know that we're a little bit over, but I'll just share the story real
No,
fast.
go ahead. You're fine. You're fine.
Okay, yeah. So Maya Angelou so they were backstage, and Tupac was yelling at this one guy, and just yelling, and then Maya Angelou came up and said, "Hey, young man, let me come and talk with you." And so he ignored her and just still continued to yell at this guy. And then Maya Angelou says, "Yeah, young man, let me talk with you." And then so he goes and like kind of still is like swears under his breath and walks towards Maya Angelou, not knowing who she is, right? And then she says, "Young man, don't you know when's the last?" Or she says, "When's the last time anyone told you how important you are? Don't you know that people came from a long history of slavery? They were bought and sold and fought so that you could stay alive today." And so in that moment, Tupac, the story goes that he started weeping, and then Maya put her arms around him. And so and then the next day, Tupac was cursing out some other guy, and then when Maya Angelou walked by, Tupac stopped cursing and straightened up and said, "Good afternoon, Miss Angelou." And so it's just there's a so when we can really call out the and really empower and uplift people in those moments when they are they're acting in a way that is unacceptable, that is actually not manhood but boyhood, because like
wow, not manhood but boyhood. Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
And when we can do that, then you know, we create this space where we remind people about their importance, that we need their full participation in this, because they're part of what they do, and the influence that they have, that men have in their families and their communities, is very important to the flourishing of all people. And so if we can communicate that, and communicate that we value men, that we must empower them and remind them about their value. If we can do that, then I think that that we would be in such a better place. And the issues that we see around us can maybe hopefully lessen. And so that's one of the things that we talk about in our group.
Wow, that is powerful. That is powerful. You know, and real quick, it just reminds me how men need to touch and need affection as well. Because in public health circles, we know that because society doesn't really allow for that between men, it allows that between women. So women can hug and hold hands and do a lot of touch, but not so much with men. So what has happened is that men will wrestle, will fight, but that's all part of physical touch. Yes, that's all to get in the physical touch. And I witnessed that as a teacher with my students, my male students, because only my male students would be wrestling and but they're always touching each other, like touch. And then I realized why. Because as a society, we don't have safe spaces or allow for physical touch between men. And this was one area where men could touch each other in wrestling, and I would see that in my high school classrooms. it just reminded me of in our discussions and what we're talking about of how men are able to be more authentic and feel and express those feelings. Oh, this has been awesome, Chris. We could talk a whole nother hour about this. So
Yeah.
when and where can people, or how can people get a hold of you if they're interested in any of your presentations? Do you only do it for college students, and any college students? Could they be outside of UH? And could they be community groups?
Yeah, so a lot of my work, well, specifically what the university is for college students or those who are within the UH or yeah, within the UH community. Um, I mean, I'm open to possibly talk stories with like communities but my primary audience or group is with those within the university. I know some other folks that work more on the community side that I can refer to, and they do excellent work as well. And so so that I can give out referrals. But if you want to reach me, you can reach me at cy9 at hawaii.edu. Shoot,
CY9 at hawaii.edu. Okay.
yeah, and you can shoot me an email. Um, Also, you can look up if you're interested in Naleo Kane. There is our website. I think it's just naleokane.org. Check us out. We also have Leo Kane as well as PAU Violence has a Facebook account. You can check out some of the activities and things that we've been kind of engaging with.
Now, Leo
Um,
Kane, PAU Violence, PAU Violence.
yes.
Yep.
And so you can just Google it and then like something should come up.
Okay.
But yeah, you can check out those groups, and then also on the websites there's other information of other groups as well. So, but if you want to specifically contact me, my email is cy9 at hawaii.edu.
CY9 at hawaii.edu. Okay.
Yes.
And then in all your experiences and all your stories, is there a significant memory or story that stands out for you, just to wrap this up? But like, have you seen men change and violent behavior within themselves, towards themselves or others?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I've like a lot of testimonies. I mean, there's not one that particularly come to me right now, but there's been opportunities where men who have had just like abusive fathers who says like, I'm ready to forgive my dad.
Wow.
There's been times where um, and they've been holding that hurt. There's times where other men they said like talked about like ways in which they lived into this kind of patriarchy, and says and like denounces that and wants to do a 180 and live in more authentic ways. And so knowing that patriarchy hurts not only women and marginalized groups, it also hurts men. And so yeah, and lots of stories about just how men are trying to be better fathers, wanting to be better fathers. And even hearing about how like I've even worked with men who've been in prison, and they saying like, we did this one what was it, like march or parade, and we're marching against violence, and one of the men shared with us that this is the first time I feel like I'm on the right side.
Wow.
And that was huge, and for someone who was in prison for that issue, because of that issue, and he's marching against that, and so and sharing with our group that he desires to be a better father to his kids, and so things like that. And I mean, this is not all just because of our group, but I think it's our group helps to facilitate that. But I think it's because it's a whole community that comes together and is supporting men. So all these different groups that are coming together to support fathers, to support men, we need everyone. This is a whole thing. This is everybody needs to get involved and support men. And so because if we can support men, then we can uplift women, and we can uplift others, everyone in the community. And so I mean, those are some of the things that that come to mind right now.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much. Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, and thank you for everything that you've shared. We could have another hour conversation about this with much more, but I appreciate you. I appreciate your message and all your work and effort in the community. What a tremendous need and a tremendous difference you're making. And thank you for opening up and sharing about your own personal things that you've gone through too. I appreciate that. I know that's going to touch people that are hearing this or watching this. So I appreciate.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for just holding this space and just allowing me to share. And I mean, you like, this is one thing that you do, but I know you do a bunch of other things. And so thank you so much for just being someone who is a light and talking about a lot of dark issues. We need more conversations like those that you meet up with and have these conversations with. We need that more. And so we'd love to continue to work together and talk stories more. So
for sure, for sure. Thanks. Thank you everybody for tuning in to Healing Hawaii with Karen Kaulana, CY9 at hawaii.edu to get in touch with Christopher Yanuaria. Mahalo, Chris. Mahalo to everybody watching. Happy Father's Day. Hau'oli la makuakane. Aloha.